Welcome back to the Alec Lewis Show. I am your host, Alec Lewis. This is episode 84, recording on Monday, May 19th. The guest for you today is a guy named Kevin Fishbane. He covers the Bears for The Athletic, works with me over at the site. He also hosts a podcast called Breaking In, where he talks with a ton of sports media folks about how they got started. It's fascinating for people like me who care much more about this industry than we probably should. Talk to Kevin about a lot of things. Caleb Williams, some of the reporting from last week. Ben Johnson, the Bears, how things are looking over there. The Bears schedule, the Vikings-Bears opener. It was a fun conversation, as always, with Kevin, so I hope you guys enjoy it. If you're new here and you're watching on YouTube, please hit that subscribe button. We're over 3,000 subs now in over less than a year, so props to you guys for building the channel. It's helped a ton. It's been a blast, and I cannot wait until we've got OTAs and stuff in the coming weeks to talk about how J.J. McCarthy looks and how the team is shaping up. Those conversations are always enjoyable. This show, as always, is presented by First Resource Bank. That's a member FDIC bank in the Minneapolis area, run by Tim Siegley, Aaron Siegley, Charlie Anderson. They have an incredible online banking platform. It's easy to set up an account, move money, do whatever you need to do, and then their branches all over the area. So highly recommend First Resource Bank. You got a lot of banking options, but theirs is the best that I've found in this area. So please, their information is in the description below. Please go check that out. It's been what the Wolves series has been phenomenal. If you missed it, I've done a couple Timberwolves stories over at The Athletic. Was at most of the games in that series against the Warriors, and hoping to be back in the building against when they face the Thunder in the coming matchup. But it should be absolutely exceptional. Trying to figure out what the matchups, the lineups and stuff are going to look like, but that place will be absolutely rocking. And I expect this series to be just a war. Some of the the Vegas odds of what this series could look like kind of stunned me a little bit because, the Wolves team is deep, they're tough, and if Julius Randle continues to play the way he's played, it's not going to be easy. That'll probably do it for basketball talk here. We'll hop right into football with Kevin Fishbane, talking Bears, talking Vikings, talking Caleb Williams and Kevin O'Connell, and a lot of different subjects. So here's our conversation with Kevin Fishbane, the Bears beat writer at The Athletic. Kevin, welcome back to the Alec Lewis Show. You're a podcast. The first time we talked, you weren't a podcaster. Now you are. So I'm expecting growth, improvement, development. How's it been? How's it been being on the microphone full time?
A lot's changed in my life, Alex, since I called you that one January day on my drive to Mobile, Alabama. And I said, Alec from the Alec Lewis Show, tell me how to do a podcast.
Right.
And,
because if there's anyone you need to pick the brain of with Windows in the background, it's gotta be me. That's there's no question.
Well, you were the 17th person I reached out to, but it's still every little bit of advice counts. But for all of your listeners, Breaking In with Kevin Fishbane, you can find it on all of your podcast listening platforms, and I get to talk to people about how they got their start in sports media. And one day I might release the practice run I did, in which I talked to you, Alec Lewis, about your start in sports media. But that's down the line.
It's not that interesting of a story, and then I don't even remember what I said. But we probably need to make sure if you just run that without edits or cuts, we got to be very careful with that. Had you wanted to talk about the Royals and the White? No, I'm kidding. We're going to talk about, because it's May 19th, and what better to talk about than the Chicago Bears and the Minnesota Vikings. I have been very Vikings focused, as you know. Draft, combine, owners meetings, and I haven't paid enough attention to the division in total. So that's why I wanted to have you on. We're going to talk about the Bears, and I'm really glad last week we were just handed a gift to make this very relevant. Seth Wickersham, who went to Mizzou. I've known Seth for a while, met him back when I was in college. He has a book coming out called American Kings. It's a biography of the quarterback, and they ran a little on ESPN excerpt with some news in it. that consisted of some Caleb Williams information. One of the things in there, I believe his father was quoted as saying Chicago is a place quarterbacks go to die. There was also a quote of Caleb telling his father that he wanted to go to the Vikings. Just generally, what did you make of that Caleb Williams story excerpt that bubbled up on a day that you probably were just hanging out and relaxing on a fine May afternoon?
I was getting ready to play some pickleball, Alec, and then this dropped into our laps. That's what you do in the suburbs.
Sounds like you. Yeah.
Listen, Carl and Caleb Williams were right. I mean, that's the takeaway. Like every fear they had about the Bears, in a sense, came to fruition. And the irony is, and I say this ironically, acknowledging that this might not be irony, but the Bears could have stumbled into a great situation now. Like maybe, like if Ben Johnson works out, if Caleb Williams works out, and the Bears start becoming a winner for the first time in 40 years, last year's a footnote. It's their origin story, if you will. Because Carl Williams knew that the Bears drafted Mitch Trubisky in 2017 with John Fox as head coach, and then Mitch had to start his career earlier than expected, and then the coaching staff got fired, and a new coaching staff came in that didn't draft Mitch Trubisky. And Carl Williams knew that 3 years later they traded up and drafted Justin Fields, put him in earlier than they wanted to, only to then fire that staff that drafted him and hire a new one that didn't draft him, including a new GM. And here they are with Caleb Williams, and the same thing has happened. Now, the difference is Caleb started from day one, as he should have, and the Bears had to fire the whole staff, and he's got to start with a new playbook. So, like, the most interesting part of what Seth Wickersham got was some of the stuff from Caleb, because we've only heard all positive things from him about Chicago, and I think Bears fans are kind of spinning it. They're like, hey, in the end, this guy came to Hallis Hall and wanted to be here. He wanted to be a part of this. He embraced a challenge, and that's what we want out of our quarterback. And that's fine. And I totally see that too. And I see Caleb also, talking to the head coach you cover and being interested in the Vikings. And, he's a smart guy, and he knows this too. So, yeah, the Caleb quotes were certainly interesting. I look forward to hearing what he has to say at some point during the off-season training. But yeah, it definitely kind of gave Sports Talk Radio kind of 3 days of conversation here. As and again, like, they were proven right by what happened, and now you kind of, the flip side of it is like you kind of move on because all those coaches are gone.
I'll never forget. I mean, I don't know why. I probably should forget it, but watching Hard Knocks and like one of those scenes of Caleb and Matt Eberflus's office and just like the awkwardness of those conversations. Nothing against Matt Eberflus. He coached some solid defensive games against the Vikings over the last couple of years. But I remember just seeing that and being like, why does this feel so awkward between this franchise quarterback guy you were investing everything in and the head coach? So it's interesting. And I also say, like, and I tweeted this, but I remember writing in December after talking to some people who have spent a lot of time around Caleb. I remember we exchanged some texts probably around those winter months, and I remember hearing then that, like, yes, Caleb Williams loved his conversation with Kevin O'Connell. The Vikings' circumstances are obvious to everyone in that they place the quarterback in optimal situations. And I remember the quote then on the text, and I went back and looked at this before we were recording, was Caleb wants to be coached hard, and he wants the coach to have some fire too. And I remember reaching out to the same person after Ben Johnson got hired, and he respects him. He'll build around Caleb's traits. He'll help Caleb recall, recognize, and understand. So, it was interesting. And to your point, probably with Caleb Williams, over the media availabilities that he's had since he's been there, there's probably been a lot of general conversation, positive, probably not a lot of introspection. So I guess that was, to your point, the interest behind what that story was last week.
Yeah, and look, I think for a lot of people in Chicago and talking about Bears fans, they probably loved seeing the validation about what they all thought should have happened, which a lot of people wanted Matt Eberflus to be fired at the end of 2023 and to just start fresh and not find themselves in the exact predicament that they did. The counter to that is they probably weren't going to get Ben Johnson in that situation. Would Ben Johnson have wanted to be there then? Who knows? Look, I joked with you, and I think I put this on social media that, like, once Matt Eberflus is fired, I think one of my first thoughts was the Bears should go trade for Kevin O'Connell. and look, I know we're months past. Don't worry, Vikings fans, it's fine. He's in Minnesota. He's not being traded. I know those were some stressful times, but yeah, I mean, I'd like to think that Ben Johnson will be the right coach for Caleb Williams. We know he's an intense guy. He's going to coach him hard. But it definitely did seem like the plan for Caleb Williams on a coaching staff level last year just didn't work. And it didn't make sense. And, I think we have all seen Caleb Williams' physical talent. And now he's going to have seemingly a better coaching staff and better linemen to work with.
This is very sports radio-y, but what did you make of the whole film thing? It's like quarterback wasn't told how to watch film. Are you supposed to be told how to watch film? Are you supposed to seek that out on your own? Was he really not like that? Again, it's very sports radio. It's ripe for we've got nothing to talk about on a Tuesday, and we got to fill 3 segments. But what did you make of that?
Hold on, let me turn into a Chicago radio caller here. Hey, I'm just calling into the Alec Lewis show. This is Bob from Dalton, south suburb there. And, back in my day, the quarterbacks, they didn't need to be told how to watch film. They go, they put the VCR in and they'd watch their tape and they'd go out there and they'd practice 2 a day. So I don't know what Caleb's problem is. I'm guessing there was a lot of that. By the way, that's shout out to the Pope there, Bob. Sports radio caller.
Yeah, it's brilliant of you.
I do see. This is why I'm not good for sports talk radio, because I do see both sides of it. Like, on the one hand, you probably want your quarterback to figure some of that stuff out. On the other hand, like, to me, Alec, like, the fact that Caleb Williams said it in a way of, like, I needed help, like, that's a red flag. That is an alarm bell. Whether or not he should have done X, Y, or Z, to me, is besides the point. The fact of the matter is, in that moment, your number 1 pick was kind of lost, and you cannot let that happen. And that is, like, top-down issue for the organization when something like that happens. So, like, I'm not going to, I'm not going to go full, like,
Bob from Dalton.
I'm going to go full flamethrower at the coaching staff, because I'm guessing they would probably say, like, hey, man, he's a professional quarterback. Like, figure it out. Like, figure out who to talk to. Figure out who to ask. I don't know what their side of it would be. But, again, you got to make sure your number 1 pick knows what he's doing and feels comfortable. And in that specific instance, obviously he didn't, and that was a problem.
The Vikings fans listening to this are probably like, man, what an interesting, we've got this coach who everything's designed around this guy. We're maximizing development over here. This does nothing. Is it the same league? Like, this is the same division. It's interesting to compare and contrast. I mean, obviously, we'll segue here into Ben Johnson. You've spent some time around him. I know you've sat down one-on-one with him. I've watched, and you have as well, years of just incredible play calling, battles within the division. Have had a lot of conversations with the Vikings defensive players and defensive staff about just how sharp this guy is, play calling, in-game, creativity, ability to get guys the ball in open space with yards after the catch opportunity. So from maybe what you expected to what you've seen without obviously seeing real football to this point, what has your impression been of you've seen a lot of coaches over there, of Ben Johnson entering this building and trying to establish his own culture?
Yeah, I mean, look, he knows what he's doing. And I know there were a lot of questions about, hey, is this just some whiz kid who doesn't know how to command a room? And then he came in there on the first day of House Hall, and you're like, oh, like he can command a room. He is going to be he's going to have the authority. He's going to show that authority in a good way. And I mean, obviously, there's a lot of stories from Lions players who really respected him, and look, we're only going to hear good things from Bears players about Ben Johnson, the coaching staff, and I would expect a lot of that to be true, certainly, if not all of it. But you do kind of have to take everything you hear this time of year with a bit of a grain of salt, because this is now the fifth head coach I've covered, Alex. I could show you like June 2015 quotes about the culture that John Fox instilled, and I could show you June 2018 quotes about Matt Nagy's aggressive offense. I could show you June 2022 quotes about how much they love the way Matt Eberflus is telling them to hustle. So we'll see what it is for Ben Johnson. Maybe it'll stick. Like that cycle that I keep kind of going back to and mocking, like the Bears are just desperate to get out of that cycle that they have put themselves in. And all those coaches I mentioned, none of them has the offensive acumen of Ben Johnson. Like the offense looked pretty good with Matt Nagy for the first year. It was actually really good with Mark Trestman in 2013 before it fell off. Ben Johnson has called plays for the best offense in football. Like he's done it. Like there's proof. Yes, he can't bring his offensive line from Detroit, but like the Bears got some pretty good offensive linemen in free agency and through the trade market. So I think that they're in a good spot. We don't know. You never know how these things turn out. I mean, shoot, like you experienced it there in Minnesota. I mean, when Kevin O'Connell, like we always talked about him as a potential, coaching candidate, and we'll see. And then they go through all the Harbaugh stuff. Like if you texted me in the middle of the Harbaugh stuff and said, "Hey, it's actually going to be O'Connell, and watch him be like a Coach of the Year candidate," I'd be like the Patriots' former draft pick from San Diego State, like. It's just hard to know. It really is hard to know with some of these guys. Matt Nagy won Coach of the Year in 2018, and he owned the city that summer, and we all saw what happened. So like again, I'm like covering this team has turned me into a little bit of a cynic in a sense. So I just want to be very careful. But, like, with what we know about Ben Johnson, what we know about the Bears, like, they are in good position to finally play some relevant football in December. It's such a low bar I set for them. Just give me games in late December where I could be sitting there, like, those playoff scenario emails that you get on, like, Tuesday morning? I'd love to get one of those emails about the team I cover so I could, like, sit there and, like, look through. Like, I think, like, I was, like, trying to – they probably send – there's, 6 of those – sent out a year, maybe.
Yeah.
So in my 12 years covering the Bears, just doing some back of the napkin math there. Let's say I've gotten 72 playoff scenario emails, and like the Bears have been mentioned, 4 of them, maybe. A couple more.
Those are always that stuff breaks my brain. Anyway, keep going.
It's confusing, but yeah, look, Ben Johnson was the guy that everybody wanted the Bears to get. He's the guy that a lot of other teams were interested in. And the Bears got him. They're paying a lot of money for him. And, now we wait and see.
Well, I was going to ask you, like, as you were going through that and recalling the history, I was going to ask at one point, like, when do you think you will know? Then you mentioned Kevin O'Connell. And I will say, I mean, and I hadn't covered the NFL prior, but week 1, 2022, Kevin O'Connell's worst game. His first game, not worst game. Kevin O'Connell's first game, 2022, week 1. They host the Packers at US Bank Stadium. It's Aaron Rodgers still with Matt LaFleur. And the Vikings put in a very impressive performance together and won that game, that week 1 game. And no, that did not solidify anything, didn't establish that he would ultimately eventually become a 2-time winner of 13-plus games in regular seasons. It didn't, guarantee that he would become the Coach of the Year. But it was like, okay, you are up for this test, which is indeed a test, in week 1. And I guess it segues nicely into this opener. It's like, I imagine your thoughts were fairly similar to mine. I mean, for me, it's J.J. McCarthy, who grew up 30 minutes from Soldier Field, whose family still lives there, who went to Nazareth Academy there, now gets to debut in this place in front of this raucous crowd in prime time. Like, there's incredible excitement and energy from the Viking side for this opener. And I imagine for you, like, I mean, there's no better way to kind of find the first answers to this test than that game in that environment, with that, this level of a test.
It won't be Rodgers.
It's not funny. The people listening to this just turn it off. Thanks, Kevin. Yeah. You couldn't help yourself. You could not.
Actually, the first thing I was thinking was J.J. McCarthy's family might live 30 minutes from Soldier Field, but for Monday Night Football postseason opener, it's probably going to take them 2 hours to get there.
Yeah, that's such an original joke. No one would have ever come up with that one.
Yeah, there's 2 seasons in Chicago: construction and winter.
Right. You're really you hit the whole Big O card. Congratulations.
Bears Vikings. I'm like sitting there thinking about. I was thinking about Matt Eberflus's first game. They hosted the 49ers. They were huge underdogs, and it was like a mud fest on the field. Like there's a famous GIF of Justin Fields sliding to the end zone, and the Bears won that game, and like they totally embodied the hits philosophy, and Fields did some like magic trick stuff, and then they won 2 more games that year. I do think that the way the Bears, I think facing Brian Flores' defense is a great, like, all right, let's see if this Ben Johnson magic against Flores still translates to this team. Caleb actually played pretty well against the Vikings in Soldier Field last year. I think it's due for almost 400 yards.
Yeah, it was unbelievable.
And then, then they go to Detroit the next week on a short week. Which can be, it's going to be Ben Johnson's return. It's going to be facing defending division champs. Like, that's going to be also, and then they come home where they get probably Brady on the call to face the Cowboys.
It's a lot of emotional energy quickly.
Yeah, it's going to be big. And, it's going to be really hard for Bears fans to stay patient because there's so much excitement about Ben Johnson. And I was thinking too, Alec, like to your kind of overall point of like, when do you know? How do you know? And like, ideally you say when you win a playoff game, right? Like, because like I've seen
Kevin O'Connell
times when the Bears was right. Like, I was just reading this about like baseball, you're the sport you used to cover, and seeing some of these managers who've been fired and thinking about like what they were doing just a year ago or 2 years ago. And it's a league that lacks patience. And like I would like for the Bears, I keep talking about this like low bar, and like if they want to like Lovie Smith really is considered like the best Bears coach since Dick Cunningham. It's not even close. And he did go to Super Bowl and deserves so much credit in the world for that, but he went to an NFC title game. It's just kind of like a question of like, how, I mean, now you're talking legacies, like how you judge. So I'm going off on a little tangent here, but like, I'm trying to sit here. I'm like, maybe it'd be nice to see the Bears score like 30, like regularly, like they've had little spurts here and there. I mean, they put up a big number against the Jaguars last year in London, and that obviously was an aberration. And they've had these little blips where they put up a bunch of points and then it goes away. Like, I feel like that's when you'll kind of know is Caleb Williams, Ben Johnson talks about EPA a lot, which has so like much. The nerds just really excited about it. And like when you start looking at the EPA numbers and seeing where Caleb Williams ranks and seeing where the Bears rank, I feel like that's where you'll know, like, okay, like because the problem with what happened last year too, Alec, is like, I don't think any of us can sit here and say with a ton of confidence that Caleb Williams is going to be a star. I certainly am not writing anything off. Like I think he's got all the potential in the world, but I don't know. Like you just didn't see enough of it last year for myriad reasons. But like seeing him take off, seeing his EPA showing that, seeing Ben Johnson's offense reflecting that in the statistics, seeing them put up a lot of points regularly, like I feel like that's when you'll kind of know, okay, like this is the right match. We got the right quarterback. We got the right coach. Now we just got to, tinker here, because as we've seen in the NFL, having the right coach and the right quarterback doesn't always mean you're going to win Super Bowls. Like there's still so many different things that factor in.
Well, that's why, and I credit them for, I mean, going out and you talked about this probably ad nauseum, but going out and acquiring Joe Tooney and Jonah Jackson and Drew Dahlman and just trying to, provide the infrastructure to where then you can evaluate with clear eyes, like how Caleb is producing, how this offense is producing, and performing. And I mean, I will say, I would be fascinated to know just what Ben Johnson's reaction was to when he finds out the schedule. It's like the first guy you've got to face is Brian Flores, who, yes, he's had a lot of success against, but you have a defensive coordinator in Brian Flores who, I mean, you don't know, like, for as much as the Vikings are, I mean, we don't know what this new look Bears offense is going to look like with all these weapons with Caleb. Like, you never know what Brian Flores is going to throw at you in a week one game. Are they going to play with 5 down fronts? Are they going to play 4 down fronts? Are they going to blitz all? Are they going to drop 8? Is it going to be palms coverage, cover 4, cover 3, cover 2, cover 1? Could be literally anything against Brian Flores. So I'd be so interested to know what his initial reaction was. But I mean, to your point, there is no running from that test. And if you can face Brian Flores in week 1 and pass it, I think people there will be pumped and should be pumped because it won't be easy. Offense personnel specific, like running back with DeAndre Swift, are they good there? Is there going to be more there? What have early impressions been of Colson Loveland? Like how do you feel like the offensive talent around Caleb is kind of being, forming together?
Yeah, we talk so much about running back because of what Ben Johnson did with Jahmyr Gibbs and David Montgomery. The flip side of that, if you're going to look at the Bears running back situation glass half full, is like if Caleb is operating on a super high level with like an abundance of pass catching weapons, like do you really need Gibbs and Montgomery? Like you can't replicate that, but do you need it if you're throwing the ball at a high level? Like we'll see. Like I know a lot of Bears fans are furious with Swift, and it didn't help watching like what Josh Jacobs did, watching what Saquon Barkley did, Derrick Henry. I still would like to see him behind like a real offensive line with like a real offense. Like I just be if you go back and you look at some of their wins last year, like he had some big time runs in those games.
He crushed the Vikings week 2, I think 2023. Just smoked them that night.
And he's got the familiarity with Ben Johnson. Now, I say all that acknowledging like the Bears like Dash Chenti. They like Travion Henderson. Like those aren't really, like there could have been opportunities for them to maybe upgrade there. They didn't. Although I do love the 7th rounder Kyle Monangai. And I'm very curious to see what he can do. Yeah. Big Ten football. So like Loveland to me right now looks like just a giant slot receiver. I expect him to bulk up once he's able to start lifting more. But I like that pick a lot in what this offense and the different things you could do over the middle of the field with him and Cole Kmet. I just think that everybody wrote off Cole Kmet, or not, I shouldn't say everybody wrote him off, but I just feel like there's like Cole Kmet, if you look at his advanced numbers last year, had his best career year, but just didn't get the ball. It's like, what would he have done if he got the ball more? If he was like playing with like a real offense, a much better offensive coordinator at the start of the year? Who knows? I mean, you know how good Luther Burden can be. You watched him at Mizzou.
Him landing with Ben Johnson, it just knowing that I cover this team that faces that team twice, it didn't make you feel great because with the ball in his hands, he's as dynamic of a college player as I've ever seen. And I know a coordinator and a guy who designs offense who's good at getting players the balls in their hands, and his name is Ben Johnson. So, yeah.
Yeah, it's like, and you could talk yourself into, like, we all know DJ Moore is a Pro Bowl caliber player. I think Roma Dunze is like a sensational player and like really could be. You want to see him potentially take off, and then with that offensive line, like, there's a lot to like. You could, each one of those guys has a couple, like every player, like they're not perfect, but there's a lot to like about what like. Ben Johnson's working with a lot. The other thing, too, you go back to the schedule out, the Bears have 5 standalone games. You usually don't give a first-time head coach and a team coming off a 5-12 season 5 standalone games. I mean, the league, yes, it's a Chicago market, but like the league thinks this team's going to be good. That doesn't mean anything yet, but like I think it's okay to like I keep telling Bears fans, and I've always done this. Like, you want to talk yourself into like, playoff games, and you want to start picturing that parade on Michigan Ave or State Street, wherever it'll be. Go for it. I'm not going to get in your way, because there's a lot to like about the collection of talent they have and what Ben Johnson can do with it. And you look at Antoine Randall as your receivers coach, and you look at Dennis Allen and the defense and all those guys that they're bringing back from what was a very good defense. Like, there's a lot to like. It's a tough schedule, and the other thing too, you talk about the first game, and like, we always overreact to week one, even though all of us know that week one tends to be like a really fluky week that is not at all predictive of what's going to happen. If like right now, Bears fans are hoping that the Vikings are not going to be good, because they know the Lions are going to be good, and they know the Packers are going to be the Packers.
It's a lot of hope.
I think a lot of Bears fans. And I think a lot of Bears fans are sitting there being like, well, it's J.J. McCarthy's going to be a rookie. It's essentially a rookie season. Like, the Vikings are going to take a step back. And if the Vikings come into Soldier Field on Monday night and win, which they absolutely could, I think it's going to be hard for Bears fans to be like, like, maybe to lose to the hometown quarterback who, obviously the Bears like looked into, certainly did their due diligence with J.J. McCarthy. That would be. You want to talk about sports radio the next day. Like, it's like you never want to call a first game of the season must win. But, like, with going to Detroit the week after on a short week, like, the Bears, like, for the sake of, like, everybody's, mindset and temperament, it'd be really good if the Bears found a way to win that game.
I haven't done the classic journalist thing of reposting the story that applies to something because you want to just prove that you're right or on it, or that it should be relevant, or that you did the work or something. But the day after the Vikings drafted J.J. McCarthy in 2024, I remember talking to Biff Poggi, who was a special assistant with Jim Harbaugh at Michigan. And I'll never forget the line that he gave me of like, he was talking to a Bears scout / executive. They asked him what Biff would do with the number one pick, and he's like, if you guys don't take J.J. McCarthy, you are absolutely out of your mind. It's like, it's a crazy quote, but I can imagine if after week one, J.J. McCarthy performs the way that Vikings fans obviously hope and think he can perform, and the Vikings go into Soldier Field and win that game in prime time with a revamped offensive line and a retooled defensive line. The reaction on both sides is going to be dramatic, and probably should be on both ends. But I'll say this: the two things for this Vikings team, and I've been very forward, that are going to dictate how far this team can go. It's quarterback play, obviously, and then it's durability. And one of the benefits of week one, especially with the way that Kevin O'Connell structures the preseason, is they're going to have, you would hope, Javon Hargrave. You're going to have Jonathan Allen. You're going to have Will Fries at right guard. You're going to have Ryan Kelly at center. And so that is a feather in the Vikings' cap as they enter this game and have the potential to do to Chicago radio what Bob from Dalton obviously would not be happy about.
So you want to do a back and forth story in week like 16 where we compare Will Fries and Ryan Kelly to Jonah Jackson and Drew Dahlman?
Yeah, I think are the editors and what that would do for SEO, and how Google search would probably just promote the heck out of that. When you throw Drew Dahlman and Ryan Kelly up there, it's the readership is voracious at that point. So yeah,
it is funny though, because those are the guys like when we did our free agency like shopping lists, like we had the same guys and when Will Fries went to Minnesota, Bears fans were like, oh no. And then they saw the money, and they're like, oh, we dodged a bullet. But what if Will Fries is great? And what if Jonah Jackson is not? Or the other way around? It's funny, the connections between these two teams. Back to the JJ conversation. Like, I talked to a lot of football people. I mean, I like JJ McCarthy, just watching him a lot in college. But I talked to a lot of football people who are so high on him. Like, I'm very excited to watch and see what he can do. I'm not really interested in having to do another, like, did the Bears draft the wrong quarterback story that I've been writing for 12 years? It should be. I hope for both of our sakes, it'll be fun of like Caleb versus JJ is just kind of this fun rivalry between these two teams over the years. By the way, a fun fact for your listeners. The Bears travel to Minnesota in week 12, I believe.
That sounds right.
It's only the second Bears-Vikings game in Minnesota before Thanksgiving in 19 years.
How do you know these facts?
Because every time I go to Minnesota, it's January or late December, and it's so cold.
Well, it's 45 degrees today on May 19th. So, well, I mean, if you think you're getting here in October or whatever, November, and it's going to be 80 degrees, I got news for you, Kevin. Woo!
Well, I started keeping track because I think they played the finale in Minnesota in 14, 15, 16. No, wow. 14, 16, 17, 18, 19 or something like that. And I just so I started doing the math, keeping track, and I went all the way back to 2006. And then they actually did play in Minnesota in early October in 2022. But selfishly, I kind of ruled that game out because I missed it.
Right. If you didn't go, then it didn't even happen. That's exactly
didn't even happen. Amir Smith-Marset never fumbled that ball. And
Cam Dantzler remember some. Yep.
Yeah, remember some guys. So yeah, no, you're right. It's probably going to be 2 degrees for this mid-November tilt between the Bears and Vikings. But there's just a fun scheduling quirk.
Yeah, absolutely. I will say, though, that week 1 game, and just seeing Caleb with that offense and Luther Burden, obviously, as a Mizzou guy, it's going to be Colston Loveland and J.J. McCarthy were extremely close at Michigan, and a lot of J.J.'s production went to Colston Loveland. I mean, you mentioned the crossover between these two teams. You just go back to 2022 with Kwesi Adofo-Mensah being hired as the GM and Ryan Poles, who interviewed here, being hired there, and the two paths that they've taken have been very different. But it sounds like your expectations, meaningful games in December. That would be a boon for the Bears. That's what I'm reading from you.
They haven't had many.
It's fair,
unless you count draft pick positioning meaningful.
Yeah, it's not.
It's not they had a little spurt in 2023, and where you could kind of talk yourself into the math, and if they catch a Hail Mary in Cleveland, who knows? But there have not been many seasons. I've told you this before, this is going to be your 4th year on the Vikings beat.
That's correct.
Okay, this will be my 13th year on the Bears beat, and you have covered more playoff games than I have.
It's absurd. It really is. It's nuts. Well, cool. I'll see you week 1. I might see you before that. There's an off-season trip or two to Chicago to be had. Some concerts, Windy City Smokeout. We'll figure. I'll figure something out. Thanks for hopping on. Appreciate it. I was going through the Bears roster. I got to tell you, before we hopped on, because I wanted to be prepared. That's what good podcasters do. And there was a player on the Bears named Ruben Hypolite II. I was like, is this a real guy? I couldn't believe it. Anyway, thought I'd end there.
Hippolyte.
Sorry. Yeah, apologies for the pronunciation mishap. Thanks, Kevin, for hopping on. As always, we will talk to you soon.
Thank you for having me.
And that'll do it for our conversation with Kevin Fishbane. Always appreciate him hopping on the show. If you haven't checked out his podcast, you can find it everywhere. It's called Breaking In, where he talks to a bunch of really famous sports media folks about their first job and some of their favorite stories. Peter King's been on there. Joe Davis, who calls baseball, football for Fox. Highly recommend you guys go check that out. And then, all of our Bears coverage, The Athletic. We have another beat writer, Adam Johns, who does a phenomenal job, along with his co-host for his own Bears podcast, Hogan Johns, Adam Hogue. So please check those guys out. And I forgot to mention at the top, but I'll be pumping this kind of in the coming episodes. One of my colleagues who writes for the Vikings, Lindsey Young, she wrote a book called Olivia the Brave. It's been a passion project for her. I know she put a lot of time and effort into it. It really champions mental health, which is a subject very close to yours truly. So in the description below, you can find a link to go get that book. But it's a children's book I think has a lot of meaning for young people, whether you have kids or you know people who have kids. And then Lindsay is just, I mean, she's been awesome for the time that I moved up here to start covering this team. So please check that out. Again, the link for that book is in the description below. If you're new here and this is your first time watching, thank you, first of all, for being here. Hit the subscribe button on YouTube. If you're on Apple, Spotify, iHeart, Podbean, wherever you're listening, we appreciate that. We'll probably be back later this week with some additional thoughts. I'm going to be out at the Omni Hotel where some of the NFL owners are going to be voting on some different stuff, tush push and playoff seeding and some different stuff that relate to this league. So I'll probably be back later this week, maybe do a Q&A episode, but looking forward to more of a quieter week, get to work ahead on some stuff. Thank you guys for being here. Episode 84 of the Alec Lewis Show. Enjoy the week. Enjoy the Wolves games. Tuesday night, Thursday night. We will talk to you very, very soon.